Have you noticed it? The quiet ones are vanishing. The thinkers, the feelers, the ones who used to speak with depth and tenderness. They're slipping away from the noise. They used to stand among the crowd, trying to share something true. Now, they simply smile, stay silent, and walk away. They are not running from life. They are returning to it. And in their silence, something sacred is unfolding. So the question is, why are spiritually awake people quietly disappearing? And what are they seeing that the rest of the world cannot? It begins with discomfort, a strange restlessness that seeps into the bones, a quiet realization that something in the rhythm of life doesn't feel right anymore. You wake up one day and notice how mechanical everything has become. People rushing, speaking, posting, performing, all driven by invisible fear. Everyone pretending to know where they're going, though no one truly knows. The conversations start to sound hollow, the laughter too loud, the ambitions too heavy to carry. And the soul whispers, there must be more than this. This whisper grows stronger with every ignored intuition. It tugs at you during commutes, while scrolling late at night, or standing beneath fluorescent lights that never dim. You start craving something you can't quite name. Peace, maybe. Or truth. Something raw. Something real. And then one day you stop pretending. You realize you don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to fit into spaces that demand your silence. You stop chasing validation and start following your breath. You stop running towards success and begin walking towards sincerity. But here's the paradox. The more awake you become, the more alone you feel. Because awakening isn't glamorous. It's not about crystals or quotes. It's about seeing the world without its comforting illusions. You see through the masks. You see through your own roles. You even see through the need to be spiritual. You awaken to the truth that everything you were chasing was never missing. You were simply too loud to hear it. Alan Watts once said, "We suffer because we take our thoughts for reality." And when the awakened see this, truly see it, they begin to detach from the theater of mind. You realize that the world you live in is not the world itself. It's your idea of it. Every judgment, every story, every anxiety is a layer of paint on the canvas of existence. And awakening is the art of washing that canvas clean. You stop being the painter and start becoming the sky, the watcher, the witness. You no longer wish to control the brush. You simply let the colors flow. But the more you see, the harder it becomes to stay blind. You walk through the city and feel the pulse of anxiety hidden behind smiles. You sense the loneliness of people who have everything except presence. You hear laughter that echoes from empty places inside. And suddenly, noise becomes unbearable, not because you despise it, but because you can hear the silence underneath. And it calls you home. You start to crave simplicity. Not the kind you can buy, but the kind you return to. Like sitting beside a river at dusk, the water murmuring truths older than language. You begin to understand that self-awareness is not about fixing yourself. It's about watching the self dissolve into something infinite. You start to see that consciousness is not inside you. You are inside it. You are not a person trying to become spiritual. You are spirit pretending to be a person. And yet, this realization doesn't make life easier. It makes it softer, yes, but also stranger. Because once you see through illusion, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to gossip, to superficiality, to endless wanting. You lose interest in drama not because you are superior, but because you finally taste peace. So you begin to disappear. From the arguments, from the noise, from the unending chase of what's next. You become quieter. Not as an act, but as a natural consequence of clarity. The need to be understood fades, and the need to understand deepens. You walk differently. You breathe differently. You then listen differently, to the wind, to the rain, to the spaces between words. It's as if life begins speaking in a subtler language, and you, finally, can hear it. There once was a woman named Mira. She lived in the glittering heart of a city that never slept. Towers of glass, traffic like liquid fire, and thousands of hearts beating to the same hurried rhythm. Every morning she joined the current, her face reflected in the metro windows, a face that smiled, though no one really saw it. Her life was a checklist: meetings, screens, messages, deadlines. Her phone buzzed like a pulse outside of her own. At night, she scrolled through photographs of sunsets she never watched, beaches she never walked, people she never met. And still, something hollow ached inside her chest. She didn't know it yet. But that emptiness was not failure. It was awakening, quietly knocking at the door. One evening, the city's lights flickered after a summer storm. Mira stood by her window, barefoot, the smell of rain drifting in. Water slid down the glass like tears the sky had forgotten to hide. For the first time in years, she turned off every light and let the darkness breathe. Outside, thunder rolled like a heartbeat of the universe. Inside, silence, vast and new, began to hum. At first it frightened her. She had lived so long surrounded by noise that stillness felt like a stranger. The quiet made her confront everything she had postponed: grief, exhaustion, longing. Her mind tried to fill the silence with plans, but the silence whispered, "Wait." She sat on the cold floor, wrapped in the dim glow of the storm. No incense, no ritual, just presence. And there, beneath the hum of the city, she heard it, the faint rhythm of her own breath. It sounded ancient, like the tide, like memory itself. Days turned into weeks. Mira began waking before dawn, when the city still slept and the air was soft. She walked without destination, past shuttered cafes, quiet trees, stray cats guarding secrets of the night. In those moments, the world felt tender again. She watched the sky blush before sunrise and realized beauty was never gone. Only her attention had been. Her friends noticed the change. "You're distant lately," they said. "You used to be the life of the party." She smiled gently, because she finally understood. She had mistaken noise for life. Now she was learning the music beneath it. One morning she left the city. She didn't make an announcement. She simply packed lightly and followed the call of water. A small village by a lake welcomed her with fog and silence. The air there moved slower, as if respecting every breath. Birdsong replaced notification sounds. The mirror of the lake reflected not her face, but her peace. At first she battled guilt, the guilt of disappearing, of no longer being useful, of not participating in the endless race. But the lake taught her differently. Each ripple came and went without apology, and the surface remained whole. Mira began to see that she, too, was allowed to be both movement and stillness. She read Alan Watts by candlelight, his words echoing her own unfolding. To be still and yet still moving, this is everything. She stopped meditating to find peace. She realized sitting by the water was peace. She stopped searching for meaning. She began tasting it. In the warmth of tea, in the laughter of a child passing by, in the wind brushing her hair. Months later, an old friend visited. "You've disappeared," he said, half accusing, half curious. Mira looked at the horizon where the lake melted into mist. "Maybe," she whispered. "I just stopped pretending to be visible." He didn't understand, but she didn't need him to. Because awakening isn't a performance. It's an intimate returning. It's the art of dissolving without dying, the gentle fading of the false self until only awareness remains. Now, when the city's noise echoes in her memories, she feels no regret. She knows that even there, beneath the neon and chaos, silence still exists, waiting for anyone brave enough to listen. Mira's story is not about escape. It's about remembering that the soul was never meant to live in constant noise. It thrives in spaces between sounds, in pauses, in breaths, in the shimmering stillness of being. And that is why, to the world, she appears to have vanished. But in truth, she has arrived more fully than ever before, present, awake, and quietly radiant, like the surface of the lake at dawn, reflecting everything and claiming nothing. When silence finally becomes your companion, you begin to hear the language that has no words. It's the sound of existence itself, the soft hum beneath every moment. It's there between the ticking of clocks, behind the rhythm of your breath, and within the spaces where thought dissolves into being. This is where the spiritually awake have gone. They haven't abandoned the world. They've simply entered the deeper layer of it. They walk among us, quietly, without need for recognition. They are the ones who pause before answering, who look into your eyes and actually see you, who listen not to respond, but to understand. You might meet them on a crowded street and never know, because awakening doesn't come with a halo. It wears the face of the ordinary, a stranger smiling for no reason, a bus driver humming softly, a child watching the rain with wonder. Their light is subtle, their power is invisible, and yet their very presence shifts the air around them, like incense that lingers long after the flame is gone. You see, the awakened do not need to announce themselves. Truth has no interest in advertisement. They know that real transformation is quiet, like dawn breaking over the mountains. No trumpet, no applause, only light gradually revealing what was already there. And perhaps that's why they disappear from the noise. Because to be fully awake is to live beyond comparison, beyond competition, beyond the restless need to prove. They no longer wish to convince anyone of anything. They simply are. Like rivers flowing, like trees breathing, like stars shining without seeking permission. Alan Watts once said, "You do not look out there for God, something in the sky. You look in you." And that's exactly where the disappearing ones have gone. Inward, to that sacred space within where heaven and earth touch in silence. They've realized that searching for peace in the world is like chasing your own reflection in the water. The more you chase it, the more it trembles and fades. But the moment you become still, there it is, waiting, unbroken. And yet, this silence is not emptiness. It's fullness beyond measure. When you enter it, you feel everything more deeply. The pain, the joy, the heartbeat of existence. It's not numbness, but an awakening of sensitivity. You see the divine in everything. The sorrow in laughter, the beauty in decay, the wisdom in impermanence. Nothing is ordinary anymore. The awakened learn that inner peace isn't a goal. It's a return. It's remembering the simple truth that life was never against you. It was only waiting for your permission to be felt. When you stop trying to control every outcome, the universe begins to reveal its dance. When you stop running from the unknown, it starts to move with you, gently, rhythmically, perfectly. You realize you were never lost. You were only distracted. You were never broken. You were simply evolving. You were never separate. You were always the whole, pretending to be small for the joy of rediscovering your infinity. And so, you stop seeking light and become the window through which it shines. You stop chasing love and start radiating it, quietly, freely, without need for return. Because now you understand. Love isn't something you fall into. It's what you are when you stop falling. Stillness becomes your prayer. Presence becomes your offering. Awareness becomes your home. You no longer measure days by what you achieved, but by how deeply you noticed, the smell of rain, the sound of laughter, the way sunlight rests on someone's hair. You begin to live slower. You begin to live truer. And in your slowness, you begin to see the pulse of eternity beating gently through all things. The world may not understand this disappearance. It may call it detachment, laziness, isolation. But the awakened smile because they know it's not escape. It's expansion. When you no longer cling to form, you merge with essence. When you no longer grasp at identity, you become everything. The spiritually awake are not gone. They've simply become what cannot be seen but can always be felt. They are in the wind that cools your face when you stop to breathe. They are in the silence that follows when your mind finally quiets. They are in the peace you feel for no reason at all, because that peace is not theirs, it's yours. It was never lost. It only waited for you to listen. So take a deep breath. Let the world rush if it must. You stay still. Close your eyes and feel the miracle of awareness itself. You are here. You are awake. You are infinite. The quiet ones haven't disappeared. They've simply become the silence the world forgot to hear. And if you listen closely enough, in the spaces between your thoughts, in the rhythm of your heart, in the breath that keeps returning, you'll hear them whisper, "You were never meant to stand out. You were meant to wake up." When Mira stopped chasing, life began revealing itself in quiet miracles. And in her stillness, she understood something timeless. That awakening was never about escaping the world. It was about seeing the world as it is, and choosing not to fight it anymore. The spiritually awake do not vanish because they are tired of people. They vanish because they are tired of pretending. They are not rejecting life. They are returning to its pulse. Like waves that no longer resist the shore, they've learned to move with the rhythm of existence. You see, letting go doesn't mean losing. It means releasing the illusion that you were ever in control. It's the art of exhaling after lifetimes of holding your breath. And in that surrender, something extraordinary happens. Life starts to breathe through you. Alan Watts once said, "Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone." That is the essence of awakening, to allow, to stop stirring the waters of the mind, to stop trying to fix, to stop trying to reach. Because in your trying, you create turbulence. And in stillness, clarity appears by itself. But here's the paradox. The more you let go, the more whole you become. The less you cling to identity, the more you discover the vastness beneath it. You realize you were never a single wave. You were the ocean, watching itself dance. To awaken is to shift from the story of self to the silence of being. It's to stop believing you are a noun and begin flowing as a verb, a process, not a person, a movement, not a name. And yet, even this understanding cannot be forced. The flower does not bloom by tugging at its petals. It unfolds by trusting the sun. Awakening happens the same way, naturally, quietly, in its own time. You begin to notice subtle transformations. The moments that once triggered anger now bring compassion. The people who once drained you no longer disturb your calm because you see they're just lost in the same dream you once wandered. The future no longer frightens you. It becomes another breath in the great rhythm of now. When you look at the sky, you no longer wish to capture it. You simply let it be. When someone misunderstands you, you no longer rush to explain. You smile, knowing their perception is a reflection of their journey. You stop seeking closure because you finally see that life was never meant to close. It only continues to unfold. And in that surrender, inner peace is born. Not the peace of perfection, but the peace of participation, of flowing with what is. The same current that moves the stars moves through your veins. You realize you don't need to find meaning. You are meaning. But here's the gentle truth. The world doesn't always celebrate those who awaken. In a society that glorifies noise, silence looks suspicious. To step away from the race can appear as weakness. To choose simplicity over spectacle seems almost rebellious. And yet, that's the quiet revolution, the return to being. Those who awaken become the still points in a spinning world. They may not speak loudly, but their presence changes the air. They carry peace the way a candle carries light, silently, without effort, without demand. They teach by example, not instruction. They heal not by fixing, but by embodying wholeness. Their disappearance is not departure. It's transformation. They've dissolved into awareness